good to see you. I have to turn on my iPad for our live streaming audience in case they ask a question during this. And Jonah, are we live streaming yet? It looks as if we are. Okay. Excellent. You all know who's sitting with me. I don't need to give you her bona fides. We drove around the battlefield, which was a life-changing event for me, and I can't remember a minute of it already because of the conversation, and I'm ever grateful for that. And so, Anne Lamott, welcome to Gettysburg on this occasion.
I am so glad to be here. It's kind of strange to be here on this exact day, following a political assassination, but yet I think it was meant to be. I'm glad for everyone who's here today. We prayed that our words may help whoever feels loneliest or most lost in the constant darkness and upheaval of life now in America. And we pray for peace. And I'm just happy to be here. Martin and I had a really wonderful hour because we were doing the Civil War, but we were also talking about what's going on and kind of trying to pool what we know in the face of such devastation and strangeness and mystery. But I want to tell you that I was wearing other clothes when we were driving around, and I had texted my Lutheran friend yesterday and said, do you think that your little Lutheran friends will care if I wear a nice blouse? And then I said, what about the shoes? Because I have bad feet because I'm old. And so my feet always hurt, and I live in Hokas. But I also brought cute shoes, which you can see later, with the purchase of each hardback book. And she said she thought it absolutely didn't matter, that you wouldn't care. So here I am, and I'm so glad to be here. I got here from California at 7 o'clock last night, and I'm leaving tonight at 7. But I went to college briefly, 2 years at Goucher, which was a women's college in Towson, Maryland, outside of Baltimore. So, but I've never been to Gettysburg, and I have always wanted to be, and so thank you for having me. So.
All right. Well, let's start with the questions that I wrote yesterday afternoon before the world turned upside down, and then we can dispatch of those quickly and move on to the things that matter most.
Yeah.
I want to mention, and you mention it in your book so well, these moments when you're with your Sunday school kids, because Sunday school is where God meets us. And I want to thank you for the recent article you wrote in the New York Times about how you talked to your kids after last week's, the issue in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a passage from your book. I drove to church on Palm Sunday, 6 days after the latest school shooting. The sky was notable for being blue with fluffy white clouds after 2 solid weeks of torrential rains. 3 more little kids had been shot in Nashville and 3 aides. I heard a commentator say that the measure of a nation is how many small coffins it allows. I had my Sunday school lesson planned around Jesus riding into town on a young donkey, running the gauntlet of fickle crowds. But I drove along, I realized I couldn't use it. You can't put a nice bow on nightmares. The temptation is to say, as cute little Christians sometimes do, oh, it'll all make sense someday. But if it minimizes the crucifixion, it's bullshit. What could I do or say today? What can we ever do or say? Thoughts and prayers? So, what can we do or say today, Anne Lamott?
Well, I wish people could have been in the car with us, because we began by saying how little you can do or say after a shooting. I was saying that we were Sandy Hook marked the end of the known world for me. And almost nothing has made sense to me since then. But so again, we find ourselves in a shooting and an upheaval and a, bracing for this terrible, terrible division, another civil war, hatred of one side for the other, and I texted this morning that this is a Rorschach test, how you respond. A lot of us like to be right or think we're right. If I were with my Sunday school kids, and I stopped teaching about a year ago after 32 years, because I figured, some of you here must be Sunday school teachers, and you know that you get a good seat in heaven if you've been a Sunday school teacher. I mean, that's the system, that you get a seat near the desserts if you've taught Sunday school for any length of time. But what I would start by doing is listening to the kids, and I'd say, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And they would say, oh, yeah, and they'd start sharing, probably not the kind of devastation, they'd say they were fine. Kids always say they're fine when asked. And then they would just say, well, we just don't know what's going on. Well, we just don't understand. Well, and I would say, wow, you're in the right place. So everything I would share, I've already shared or heard from Martin in the last hour and a half or so, but I always tell my kids that great line of the Christian writer Barbara Johnson, who said that we're Easter people living in a Good Friday world. And you brought up right away that we're in Holy Saturday. And it's just miserable. And the American way is that you change that. You change how you're feeling. You shop, or you exercise, or you come up with a cute platitude, or God has a plan, or whatever. And that wouldn't work for my kids, And I would repeat what Mr. Rogers' mother always said, that in a tragedy or after a tragedy, you look for the helpers. And we look for the people that are showing up. Boy, do I not need a lot more opinions this afternoon now. I don't need analysis. I need a certain kind of consolation that comes from our togetherness, and our togetherness in the car, which becomes its own kind of chapel. The consolation of God drawing very, very near when we are most troubled. And, I always tell the kids we take the action and then the insight follows, which is what someone said to me in 1986 when I first got sober. They said, you take the action and the insight follows, because my parents were intellectuals and atheists, and so the last thing you would do would be to ask God to draw close. You would figure it out. And I was in my probably early 60s, I'm 71 now, when I realized what a terrible slogan figure it out is, and that it's just not useful. And so I would help the kids on Holy Saturday to be there for one another and to figure out what the action is. Well, with this shooting I wrote about, and somehow we made cards for, I don't think it was Uvalde. The tragedy is that they're all kind of mixed up in my head now, and I think it's back here.
It's
165?
Yeah,
here it is.
165.
So, Nashville. It was a shooting in Nashville where so many little kids and 3 kids, and I had 9-year-olds, 2 9-year-olds. I have a tiny church and a tiny Sunday school, and there were 2 9-year-olds among 5 kids, and some of the teachers were killed also, so that was Nashville. But so the action we took was to make cards, for the families. And I know people from 12-Step Recovery in Nashville. So we sent them a lot of very colorful cards of love and hope and condolences. And I just sent them to my friend. Now you could say, well, what good does that really do in the broader discourse? And it's like, that's not my business. That's not my problem. And thanks for asking, which I don't think is about me. And so we sent them to my friend and said, give these to whoever you're called, that you feel it in your heart to give them to. So, and then also one last thing, Martin, is I heard Carolyn Mace, who wrote the book Why People Don't Heal and How They Can. She's a spiritual writer, MYSS, and she's very profound. But I heard her say that the evil has grown nuclear, and so the love must become nuclear too. So I was going off to give a talk somewhere, so I got nail polish with glitter in it so I could remember that there was light. You know, let there be light and let it be me, and that the sparkles would remind me of the Holy Spirit. Now, my husband's family all lives in the Arlington area. He was raised there, and I was with their family the night. I guess I was speaking in D.C. would make sense. And the one woman commented on my nails, and I told her the story. And Ukraine had just been invaded. That was it. And then I remember the Carolyn Mace thing that the word, and so I told her the story of putting sparkles on my nails. So I remembered the Holy Spirit. I remembered that the love needs to be nuclear and quantum. And she looked at me and she said, well, I'm sure that will really help the people of Ukraine. You know, and I thought, well, you get to say and think whatever you think and want to say to me, but this has nothing to do with me or my nails. So anyway, I encourage my girls and my boys that we have sparkly nail polish in my Sunday school room.
Well, maybe that's something we can adopt here at the seminary as well.
Yeah.
So, you've lived this incredibly public life and shared some of your most private struggles in your writing. It seems like a paradox in some ways. How does it feel to know that everybody in this room knows about the year you got sober, or the struggles you had with your son, and the fact that your grandson is 16, and the fact that you met your husband late in life and you had this beautiful vacation in Cuba together? I mean, how does a private person live publicly in this world?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. One is that I let you all know what I'm comfortable with you all knowing. And so it could seem very private to you how I feel about, like, my thighs, or, you know, or struggles I've had with in any realm. But by the time I write something and publish it, I know it's universal. And if you haven't had a child who got very lost, then you know there was someone in your family who did. There was a nephew. There was an aunt. We're all in the same boat. You know, and our lives are really hard. It's hard here on the incarnational side of things. And so I feel almost sure when I share something personal that it's universal. Now, the stuff that's really intimate, I share with my husband, 2 best friends, and my son, right? And so, and then I might go into a room of recovery and share it, but it's like a bullseye, you know? And so here in the center is me and Jesus and my little Annie, and then the next one is out, might be Neil and Sam and the 2 or 3 best friends, and then recovery. And what I write is out here, and I assume it's universal. Do you hear that ringing?
It's a cricket.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now wait, you told me in the car it was Jesus, your cat, and then your husband.
And then the family.
And then the family.
Well, no, it goes Jesus, the cat, and then the family, including the current husband. But I just can't help it. That's where I find my consolation. But so I wrote my first book. It was published when I was very young. I was 26. It was a novel called hard laughter. My dad had just died of brain cancer, and that was in the late 70s. And when my dad was diagnosed, it was a metastatic melanoma. So there was no way he was going to recover. Back then, no one had ever recovered. And I did what one does. What do you do in the face of, an anvil dropping on your family? You go to the library, right? And you find books on it. And there's hardly a book to be found on a family going through cancer. It had not come out of the closet yet. Did not come out of the closet till the AIDS epidemic. And people started to say, I have this, I'm going to die, I hate it, I need a lot of help. And then passing along to others what actually made a difference and what you shouldn't even bother trying. And so I'd written this book, and I just always loved, like in the women's movement radicalized me, and it taught me you get to tell the truth, you get to have all your feelings, you get to be angry. If you're an American girl over the age of 12 and you weren't angry, you had missed the boat, and we just shared these stories and we laughed about them, and I have said for years that laughter is carbonated holiness. And when you're laughing with somebody, you're halfway home. And so I had learned then that sharing the truth of what we've been through, our shared experiences, are what heal us. And I've always believed in stories, that stories are a path of healing. And I was telling my stories in Hard Laughter. Then after Hard Laughter came out, all of these girls and women told me that they had had men abuse them and in one way or another, and that had absolutely 100% not come out of the closet. So this is early 80s, so I had this character in my book, Rosie, have a man expose himself to her. Well, after that came out, then people would just come up and trust me to tell me this stuff they hadn't said out loud. And so I just felt like, for some reason, I'm able to share these stories, my experience, strength, and hope, and my insights, and the help, spiritual and philosophical and practical, that has been so freely given to me. There's that hymn, I don't know what hymns you sing, you Lutherans, but I'm a Presbyterian, God's frozen chosen, and we, with our committees and casseroles, we sing a lot of old hymns from the Deep South, but one is freely, 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 you have received. I don't sing well, but freely, freely give. You've been freely had grace and love and support and wisdom poured into you. Give it away. It's not pull up the ladder, I got mine. And a famous poet, and my mind is a little blank, I blame it a little bit on jet lag and a little bit on dementia. She said the function of freedom is to free someone else. And I've really lived by that. And so I just started telling these stories, and as I said, the stories I tell are the ones I'm comfortable you hearing.
Yeah. So, because we are at a Lutheran seminary, I should mention that Martin Luther said that Christ frees us so that we can be servants to all.
Yeah.
In the freedom of a Christian.
Yeah.
So there, I got my seminary stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
We can move along. I'm going to read a quote. You were on the phone with your priest friend Tom, and Tom has a roommate who apparently likes to eavesdrop on your phone call. So the other day when I talked to Tom about how some days everything sucks, his roommate, and other Jesuit, was listening on speakerphone and called out, "Yes, Jesus was full of compassion for those suffering, but also says to look for hope one day at a time, to see that if the lilies of the field and the sparrows were cared for, how much more would we be?" Well, that's very nice, Jim. It would be easy if you were a bird or a plant, I countered. "You have a choice," he said. "What are you going to focus on, Annie?" he asked. "All the things that suck, or sparrows and lilies. And I guess, aren't all of our lives seeking balance between sparrows and lilies and things that suck? Because to ignore one is to basically fall apart.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the anti-anxiety sermon in the gospel, right? And it's very beautiful, and I love it. I think about it a lot. I've taught it a lot. And it's also very, very hard here. And to believe it, to believe in that sermon and to understand how beautifully safe and cared for we are, just as the lilies of the field are, it's a subversive act. Yeah. Because it would be, I mean, because I'm a Democrat and I'm a Christian, the other Democrats can't believe I'm a Christian, and the Christians can't believe I'm a Democrat, you know. And Christian bookstores don't carry my books, so to believe in those words that to me are the ultimate truth is a subversive act, and at the same time, some days are just too long, you know, and our families scare us to death. If you have children or nieces or nephews, you know what it means to feel existentially terrified that somebody is not going to be safe, and you also realize that you're not going to be able to save or fix or rescue them. There's a 12-step program called Al-Anon for people who believe they can save and fix and rescue others. It's for people like me who have tiny control issues. And you don't save anyone. Not one person has ever gotten another person sober in history. It doesn't work that way. What works are the catastrophes of our own choices and a higher power, the loving hand of God, as you may understand God. So yeah, to me, it's not a balancing act so much, because that would suggest that I have balance, which is not exactly true. I have, you know, there's a whole New Age, and I really love all the, you know, proponents of the New Age, and I was raised by another family that were Christian Science healers, and Mary Baker, Mrs. Eddy was the foremother of all new thought of the New Age and whatnot. But they say, and you see bumper stickers, if you can put on a bumper sticker, I'm going to have trouble with it. But they say you can't have faith and fear at the same time. And that just drives me crazy. Like, I don't think Jesus says that really. And I have faith and fear together all the time. Like right now, today, last night and today, I've had a huge amount of fear. What does this latest shooting mean? What does it mean for peacemakers? What does it mean for the whole gestalt that we face now as a nation? And I have a huge amount of faith. And you know, we talked about where we remember the old stories. Remember the stories in the Hebrew Bible of catastrophic, hopeless situations. And we see that God always makes a way out of no way. Well, I'd like to know what that way is going to be, because I was raised by intellectuals, and I used to be really smart, and I used to like to be able to, and I was good at math, and I like things to work out, and to be, there to be a nice equation for it. But I know that God will make a way out of no way. I know I probably won't get what I want. You know, but the faith tells me, and I don't see balance here, but the faith tells me that most of my life, when I haven't gotten what I want, thank God. You know, thank God. If you get what you pray for, you're shortchanging yourself, is my personal experience. And so what we do, we turn to the stories and we turn to one another. And we say, I don't want to be alone right now. And we say, can you tell me what you make of this? And can you tell me what you're feeling and thinking? And do you want to go overeat? You know, do you want to go have a second lunch with me? And you know, there's so many ways of comfort, and we turn We turn to the helpers. I immediately have a rabbi friend. I call her my rabbi, and she calls me her Sunday school teacher. There's a story about her about Yom Kippur, which is where we are now, but I can never find anything in these. Well, let me read you this poem, because this is really about not knowing and about trusting that if you get what you want for, if the people arrive who vote like you do, then God's on the throne still, right? So this is by Rumi, the great Persian mystic, translated by Coleman Barks, and it's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from above. Each has been sent from above as a guide. So last night I tweeted, in fact, here, and I was in somewhere else. Where was I?
Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore, yeah. I tweeted, this is a Rorschach test, and how you respond. The only thing we have any control over is how we respond as people of the gospel, of peace and love and forgiveness, or whether we respond as, people of the sword. So, and it's all mixed up. And if I were God's West Coast representative, I would have things organized in a way that always made sense. It would be like, and I've written about this, but it would be like that your silverware drawer in the kitchen. So all wonderful things would be where the knives go, and then challenging, tough things would go where the big forks go, and then disastrous would go where the salad fork, and so on. But instead, you realize, I think sometime when you're a teenager, that it's just like it all gets tipped out on the floor.
Yeah.
And that it's all marbled together, and that grace abides, and it's all such a mess sometimes that we hardly know who we are anymore, but we remember whose we are.
Maybe that's why children are wise, because they eat with their hands.
Yeah, maybe so.
And they don't bother to worry about the silverware.
Yeah. Or which fork is correct at any given time.
So ostensibly this is a conversation about aging.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You wrote a beautiful series of Washington Post essays last year about aging, and you discussed these physical things that are going through your life: wrinkles, memory lapses, sagging skin. And it's one of those things I love about your writing, your transparency, and you're still sensitive to people's comments. I tried to shake myself back into my essential wildebeest self, but all I felt was my butt swinging back and forth. So
let me tell you the background to that story. I had a sponsor and a mentor in 12-step recovery named Horrible Bonnie, I've written about forever. Yeah. And she talked about how when a wildebeest is racing away from a predator, and they finally get away, before they do much else, they stand there and they shake to metabolize all the fear and anxiety, all the cortisol and chemicals that they're flooded with. And the way she put it was, she said they shake back down into their essential wildebeest selves. And so that's where that comes from. And so I think about that. I mean, that's who we are, right? We have to metabolize the attack, the fear, the chase, the threat. And then we can go out from here in our essence, which is that we're children of God, We're what E.E. Cummings called human merely beings. But I kind of forgot the question.
Well, so how's that whole aging thing going for you
Aging
nowadays?
thing.
Or we could skip ahead to something more fun.
I'm happy to talk about the aging thing. I got into drugs and alcohol really young, in my teens, and and this was the 60s, I never expected to see 18. Then I never expected to see 21. Then I never expected to see 30. Don't trust anyone over 30, right? And I know a lot of you are less young than others, and maybe around my age, give or take. And when we were kids, when we were coming up, people that looked like us were like so old. They were like dying old people, you know? And they were like, and now it's so funny because we are so rich in aliveness and in activities and in the love and the ministry and the mentoring and the grandparenting, the grandaunting and uncling and the great and the and the pickleball and the and the pets and so it's funny because I had this real thing in my head. A lot of then my dad died so early. It was 56 when he died. 54 I was 23, and so that was sort of shocking. And I lost my sense that you live to a ripe old age, even as I was seeing that a ripe old age might really be very ripe and delicious. But again, I keep writing things that other people haven't written about. I wrote the writing book I wrote is called Bird by Bird because almost every writing teacher at a big conference will say, if you do certain things, outlines, for instance, or whatever, that you will surely find an agent to represent your book. Now, the truth is that something like 3 out of every 1,000 people at writing conferences sells their book. And I wanted to say, that's not what it's about. What it's about is you having always wanted to be a writer and how to bring that into fruition, how to become a writer, how to write every day, how to immerse yourself in the written word, how to discover great teachers out there. The Paris Review collections of writers at work, I wanted to just say what is really true, because it's just BS that if you do certain formulaic things, you're going to get your book published. And the other great palace lie is that if you do get your book published, you're going to feel differently about yourself, and you're suddenly going to be flooded with self-esteem that will never be taken away. And it was all a lie. It was all an inside job. If you didn't have it before you published, you weren't going to have it after you published. It wasn't out there. In Al-Anon, they always say you don't go to the hardware store for bread. It's not there. So I wanted to write a writing book that was truthful. Then I wanted to write I wrote a baby book before that, operating instructions, that said, I'm madly, madly in love, and I'm losing my mind. And I'm thinking of putting the baby outside for the night, bundled up very carefully, of course, so that I can get one night's sleep. And stuff like that. And so with this aging stuff that I wrote at the Post, I just wanted to say what it's really like. Like, there are miracles and blessings. You get rid of so much stupid stuff. It's like having been flying in an airplane your whole life with these boxes and cartons of stuff that you thought was meaningful and must be attended to. And you hit 65 and you're going to move again, or you're downsizing, and you understand how sweet people were to have sent you 20,000 birthday cards over the years, but maybe you don't need to move with all of them. And for however many years you cared what your butt looks like. And your life is short and precious, and you don't have that kind of time. That's what my friend Pammy said when she was dying, and I was trying on this short little, I dressed like usually really baggy, comfortable clothes and my hokas, and I was in this little dress for this guy I was dating. She was in a wheelchair with her wig on. She was going to die at 37. And I said, do you think this makes me look big in the thighs? And she said, Annie, you don't have that kind of time. You know, and when you get to be 65, you give up a lot of that stupid lie of the culture. And I know it's true for men also, but I know what women were told about themselves and where their value sprung from.
Yeah.
And it mostly had to do with complete depletion of life force and focusing instead on the surface and on how everybody else valued you or didn't, how you could be increased, whatever. So with this older stuff, I mean, there is, you know, I was a tennis champion my whole life until I was 16 and under as I played, so I was 16. Then I went to Goucher and I played tennis there. I was on tennis courts from the time I was 8 till, and then I taught tennis when I dropped out of college when I was 19. And my skin shows that. You know, there wasn't this consciousness until my dad got sick with a skin cancer. But when I was coming up, and I know this, most of you remember Sea and Ski was the only sunscreen that smelled like pennies, remember? And it was probably SPF like 8 or something. It was nothing. And my skin is really, really, really damaged. And it's like, well, what am I going to do about that? You know, you know, I see women all over who, I mean, what are you going to do with that? Well, the miracle of being older is that you sort of learn acceptance, or even, wow, like my feet, which I just don't have great feet. I've had planters a lot, and I also have bursitis in my hip. And I look at my feet and my hip, and they've taken me all over the world. They've taken me through this life that has been an active one. They have taken me bedside. They have taken me anywhere that God called me to be, and I still walk every day, and I walk less, and my horrible physical therapist says I can't walk on inclines. And so a lot changes, like your consciousness changes when you get older, because first of all, when you're older, and this is one thing I wrote about, so often you're getting bad news about somebody else, let alone yourself, but it almost feels like daily, or at least weekly, someone is worse. The treatment isn't working. Someone is going in for a series of MRIs because something's going on, or someone has died. Over and over, it's like there's a sniper in the trees. And that changes your consciousness. Like I have, who knows? Not a soul here knows how long you have to live. And if there's any doctors in the room, you don't know how long you're going to live. None of us knows. How are you going to live in the face of that? So the fun stuff to write about is like the terrible vision and the Mr. Magoo and I can't do anything technologically. I mean, that's where I seem oldest. I was telling Martin, I was trying to take a picture or something. I forgot what I was trying to do in Epley with my iPhone. And my son said, sort of nicely, a couple years ago, he said, Mom, don't let people see you try to do things. Because he thinks that people seeing me unable to, I don't know how to turn off the iPhone exactly. And I sometimes ask people on the other end to turn us off. It's hard. I was raised with pencils and paper. And but that's stuff fun to write about. And, you know, my husband said the other day that he's younger than I am too. We got married 3 days after my first Social Security check. But,
good timing.
Yeah. He said the thing about older bodies is they really hurt and they don't look good. He was talking about us, you know. And at first I was sort of offended, and I thought, yeah, that's right. You know, they don't look like the way advertisements and commercials tell you the human body can look. They're older cars. So anyway, I did love writing about that, but I love writing about the grace, you know, the grace of myopia. I can't see your flaws as well, you know, and that's a blessing. And I can't see my own flaws, and I space out, and my memory's getting funny. And you probably saw me walk across here to get to the bathroom to change. I was going to change, but also and get ready to come on. because I had a t-shirt on, and I forgot to look in the mirror to see if I look shiny. So I don't know, because there's no mirror in the green room, if I look shiny or if my lipstick is still on, because I spaced out. Yesterday morning at 5:30, I was racing out the door. There was a car to pick me up for the airport in San Francisco. I had all this stuff. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You have to bring a warm jacket now because the airplanes won't put any heat on you. So I had a warm jacket, it's 83 or something here, and clothes to change into, and jammies, and my medicine, and my this, and my that. And so I was all totally pleased with myself for my efficiency. And then my husband wandered out to the front door where I was standing with my suitcase. And then I did what one does. I pretended I had left it there and was coming back for it. And I actually did the whole thing. I went in and brushed my teeth, which I'd already brushed. So he would think, the person I'm closest to, so that he would think that I'd actually had a good reason that I was just going to come back for it after I brushed my teeth.
Neil, if you're watching,
Yeah.
That's what she did.
Yeah. And then he felt a tiny bit bad for having thought that I didn't remember my suitcase. But because I'm like a terrible Christian, I just let it go.
Yeah. So it sounds like your marriage is going well.
It really is. It's a blessing because we're both very focused on the spiritual. And he has a nice sense of humor.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, that helps.
It really does.
Yeah.
After 30 years of my jokes, I don't know if my wife has a sense of humor left.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to talk to her later.
She'll be happy to meet you.
Yeah,
She's
we'll
out
talk.
there somewhere. But
We'll talk, honey. Okay.
maybe that's not such a good idea. I'm not sure. I want to make sure that we have time for folks to ask you questions. And I don't want us to go in the weeds on this, but you write about this person in your attic, this woman, that you could hear scraping around and making all sorts of noises at night. A very frightening experience, the way you relate it. And I'm wondering if you've ever talked to that person lately or reconciled
Is
yourself.
that in somehow?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the attic section, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a chapter on the attic, and both the metaphor and the reality.
Yeah.
And after my husband and I got together, I lived in a home that was big enough for Sam and his partner and my grandchild, who we've been raising, who's 16 now. I mean, I thought he was like 7. Once when he was 9, we were having a birthday party. I said, God, I thought you were like 6 or something. He said, Nana, I live here. How can you think I'm 6? And I said, you'll know someday. But at any rate, but it wasn't big enough for Neil, who's also on top of having a huge grown life and 4 children, a huge being. So we had to move down the street, and you know what that meant? That meant going into the attic. But what you're talking about is the metaphor of who's up in the attic, who was up there when you were a little child, afraid of the dark, who's up here in the darkness of your brain, telling you certain things about yourself, telling you about how afraid you should be, or how disappointingly you handled that, or all the things you should be diligent about and vigilant about. My husband, whose name is Neil Allen, wrote a book that you might be interested in. You can go to shapesoftruth.com, which is the name of his first book, but not the book I'm thinking of. But you can go to shapesoftruth.com and find out about this book that I'm going to tell you about, and therefore I can save you some money. But it's called Better Days. And when I met him, which was 9 years ago, he taught me, he does this work with clients on the inner critic, which Jung would call or Freud would call the superego. And it's that voice, thank you. There's a voice that kept us alive when we were little ones because it kept us from running out into the street. It kept us from swimming out too far. It kept from making a fool of ourselves in class or of sharing terrible family secrets, you know, and all of that. But we don't need it anymore, and yet it's there, and we hear it. Everything I sit down to write, I hear the inner critic say, oh boy, I wrote a piece in the New York Times about shootings last Friday. What's today, Thursday?
Yeah.
It hasn't even been a week. And so I think, well, you can't write another piece. Well, you can't. Well, you can't. But that's my inner critic. It doesn't know what's on my heart or what's in my creative self or my soul. And that's a whole different experience anyway of what's going on. And so Neil taught me, starting 9 years ago, to identify the inner critic. Because without identifying it, you think it's got something truthful to share. And that's the scary, witchy woman in the attic, sharing scary thoughts. And so Neil, I can just tell you how you imagine yours, what it sounds like. They often, coincidentally, sound like one of your parents who kept you feeling small and ashamed or scared of everything. And you say to it, you notice it. It's telling me, Annie, right now I feel like, do not share any opinions right now, right? Which I think is probably pretty good advice. But at any rate, I'll hear, no, don't, no. And I'll say, oh, it's you. That's the battle cry Neil's taught me is, oh, it's you. It's not truth. It's my inner critic trying to keep me from running out into the street, trying to keep me from doing something that the other kids will bully me for. Like you guys, you know, might bully me if I say this, if I do something wrong. Well, I've learned to dismiss it, but I'm nice about it. I'm always going to have it.
Yeah.
I'm always going to have it. It's terrified of being killed. And I can say to it nicely, I would say to you, oh, it's you. Why don't you go read for a while? Because I want to try to write this thing. There's great lighting over there. And I'll come back for you. You know? And I've learned to do that, and it radically changed my life. So the book is Better Days, but a lot of the information is at shapesoftruth.com. But that was I was a terrified child. We had eaves, not an attic. And my bedroom was where the eaves were. And my parents were unhappy. I was a very, very tiny child. I started getting migraines at 5 years old, trying to save my parents. I had migraines my whole childhood and youth. And I was really bright. I skipped a grade. I was emaciated. I was just a thin girl. When I was coming up in the 50s, it was fine for men to comment on girls' bodies, like to the parents. They might say something to my parents about how thin I was, or about my hair, or about my eyes, and how sexual my eyes were, because they were really huge when I was young. And they'd say, oh, does she have bedroom eyes? I'd be 6 years old. And I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good, because I was an extremely sensitive child. And I knew it was a bad thing. And so there was this thing in the eaves, and in this book I wrote about in the attic, that it's always there, you know, and it's a long road back from that kind of childhood shame and fear and abuse. It's a long road back. And when I'm most vulnerable, like tomorrow when I get home, I'll be home at midnight tonight, but it'll be 3 o'clock East Coast time in the morning, and I'll be tired, and I will be at my most vulnerable, and the inner critic is going to be drumming its fingers, but I'm going to hear it, and I'm going to say, oh, it's you. This isn't true. I didn't do a bad job in Gettysburg. I didn't this. I didn't that. Like Martin isn't freaked out about the hour we spent in the car talking about God, you know. And I'll just say, oh, it's you, and then I will move immediately into radical self-care. What do you need to eat? What do you need to do? What do you need to not do? I'm going to be the mommy. I'm going to say, what do you need me to cancel for you today? You're just depleted. And so that's like the most revolutionary work I ever did, which was to have a way to talk to whatever you want to call that voice up here that tells you to stay small and afraid, and for God's sake, don't make a mistake. For God's sake, don't make a mistake.
Yeah.
That was my teaching as a child.
Well, I'm glad you've learned how to make mistakes well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to do questions soon.
Yeah.
Let me share you one very, very important teaching I have, which you've read. If you've read many of my books, you've come upon it. But it's something that same Jesuit, Tom Weston, said 30-some years ago when I was just a few years sober. He said, because I've just dealt with so much toxic shame. You know, some shame helps you reset a little bit and realize what your values and morals are and that you're off track. But the toxic shame so many of us have had, he said, here's what's true of the American adult. There are 5 rules. 1, you must not have anything wrong with you or different about you. Right? Like, good luck. Rule 2 is if you have something wrong with you or different about you, you should get over it as quickly as possible. You really need to correct this. The 3rd rule is that if you can't correct it, you should just pretend that you have and act as if. That's not even a thing anymore, that silly old thing, right? The 4th rule is that if you can't even pretend to have gotten over it, you should not show up because it's so painful for the rest of us when you do. And the 5th rule is that if you're going to insist on the right to show up, you should have the decency to be a little bit ashamed. And that's what I tell every writer in every writing class I've ever taught, that that's what you're up against. And what is the antidote? The action, the writing. Can I make a really quick shameless plug? Okay. Well, I already did with my husband's book, but I'm giving you I'm saving you money on that. So my son, Sam, who most of you met in operating instructions, is now 36 and married. He had a baby at 19. He has a 16-year-old, and he has a writing collective for any of you who have wanted to be writers. And I know there's lots of writing stuff at seminary. It's a collective of 700 students online, some beginners, some very accomplished writers, people that have always wanted to write, people that have finished several novels and not gotten an agent. And and you have to pay a yearly subscription, but that's where I teach now. They have agents come in and say, do not send me your manuscript with do not send me an outline. They say, do this. They answer your questions. They have my editor, Jake at Riverhead, comes in and edits work at the collective, and it's called awritingroom.com, awritingroom.com. And there's a free thing I'm doing, and it'll be on my Facebook this week, but I think if you go to awritingroom.com, you can also hear it. It's one word, lowercase. It's not thewritingroom.com. Those people are our mortal enemies. And their program sucks.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so you can go there and hear like 45 minutes on basically every single thing I know about writing, and it's free. And you may want to stick around. So we were going to leave some time. We have 15, 20
and
minutes.
I'm going to put that link to awritingroom.com. I'll put it on our new website, which you're going to learn about in an email coming soon to an inbox near you. Okay. We do have some questions from folks out here, perhaps. Okay. I need to know if that microphone is on, so you might tap it. Okay. But if anybody has a question they'd like to share with Anne. Now it's on.
We're working.
Yeah, if you don't mind coming over
we have
here.
A few minutes. The microphone stand is being a little weird.
Come on up. I'm really happy to talk about life and writing and recovery and the world and politics, whatever's on your heart.
I'll move the stand. The stand is off. You speak right into it.
I have a hurt hip, so I just limped in front of everyone, and here I am. My name is Susan, and I'm sure that I speak for a lot of people when I say that I'm just so totally thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
And there are so many things that I've read that you've written that have just stayed in my life and have made my life better. And as you were talking, I was thinking of one because there's so many that I read a long time ago, and it sort of resonates with what you were saying. You said sometimes you have to treat yourself like that sweet little old lady down the block that that is really good and sweet and generous and goes slowly. And as I've gotten older, I'm more like that lady than needing to treat myself like that lady. But I learned that when I was really young, because you wrote that a long time ago. That's always been so precious to me. But what I wanted to ask was, as we're talking about aging, I have a son whose name is Sam. And I read your book about your Sam right before I had my son at 43. And anyway, when he was about 12 or 13, he said, "Mom, I always thought as you got older, you would kind of need God less, but I think you might need God more." And I was thrilled because he was so little. But could you talk a little bit more about your relationship with God and your spirituality and connect it with aging?
I thank you for your comment, your compliment and your question. I have said, and I'm not even joking, I have the theological understanding of a really bright second grader. I don't care. And I did not want to be a Christian. I tried very hard not to be a Christian. My parents, as I said, were atheists. My father's parents were Christian missionaries in Tokyo from 1918 to 1935, and he was born in 23. He grew up hating Christians, especially, they were Presbyterians, God's frozen chosen. They were not warm and loving people. It was Japan too, it's Tokyo, so it's militaristic and male and whatnot. And my mom was baptized Church of England in Liverpool when she was 10, but when she came here, it made my dad happy for them to share the atheism, right? And then I secretly always believed in God. And I believed that if I said something in the dark when I was alone, like if I said hello, that something heard me. And I felt that something drew near. And then I'm in my 20s, I take a lot of hallucinogens, and I actually have a lot of bright, dramatic spiritual awakenings. But what I'm trying to do is not become a Christian, because the most public Christians in this country just seem so scary to me. And it just seemed like that can't be right, what you think about the people I love most. That can't be right, what you think about the absolutely most vulnerable amongst us. And so I tried and tried and tried. Well, when I was still drinking, I found this little church, and I write about it a lot in Traveling Mercy, so I'm going to skip ahead to the conversion. But the moment that Jesus came to me in this houseboat, the same size as the carpet I'm sitting on right now, this little rug, I turned away. And I said, I would rather anything but that. And then he and I know this seems very primitive and not very intellectual, I felt him come for me, and I didn't want him to come for me. And I wrote in Traveling Mercies about how it felt. I lived on this houseboat community, so there's a dock. It felt like this little homeless feral kitten was running alongside my feet, and it wanted me to take it in, and I didn't want to take it in, and I'm not stupid. And once you feed a little homeless cat, it's no longer a homeless cat. You now have a cat, right? I had zero money, and I couldn't have afforded it. I couldn't afford me. And then one day I just surrendered, and that's what grace came to me as, was surrendering, was hanging my head. And I was going to this little church trying to stay alive from the drugs and alcohol. And I'd always left for the sermons because I didn't want the heavy Jesus part. I wanted the nice singing, all those old civil rights hymns and all those. And I surrendered. And I said, fine, you can come in. And I haven't gotten too far away from that. I think about and I pray to Jesus all day, every day. I do not have any interest in the triune nature of the Trinity. I don't need to understand that better. I don't need to know who shot the Holy Ghost. I don't need to be able to answer any questions at all except of my Sunday school kids. And I'm sort of OCD, I always over-prepare for class so I can answer questions that come up, except for the question we're asking here today. What now? What do we do? So, you know, that's best how I can describe my relationship with God. It's like my beautiful big brother, best friend, comforter. Just like I feel him physically like a child would. I feel like there's 3 of us on stage right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, but only 4 shoes.
Yeah.
So yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Gwen, and I'm a student here at the seminary, and we're just really blessed to have you here today. I wanted to share that I found Bird by Bird when I was in a really dark place myself, and it really helped me. So thank you for sharing that book with the world and your work. I wanted to ask you today, what is your spirit animal?
Oh, my spirit animal. Well, you know, I talk about cats just all the time because I have a really sick, codependent relationship with cats and my current cat and all cats. And but I don't think, you know, my spirit animal has always been a pelican because my dad, and we have a lot of pelicans in the Bay Area, you know, now, a little bit later in the fall, we'll have white pelicans. And which are really lovely. But pelicans are just such beautiful, graceful flyers, you know. And so I always had a real relationship with them, with my dad, because we were always at the beach, we were always at the tide pools, and you'd see a stream of pelicans cross the sky, and it always elicit. What's your spirit animal? A dog? Yeah, yeah. See, we always had, I don't know how people have survived these years without dogs and cats, although I know some of you are allergic, but yeah. But so I think my spirit animal is a pelican, but it's partly because I was so close to my dad and he was a bird watcher, and my licensed, what do you call it when you have a guy, my licensed service animal is a cat. Yeah, and the licensed service animal who makes it possible for me to go on every day. Yes, you.
Hi. So I somehow stumbled upon Somehow last year because a friend gave it to me as a gift. And I had heard of your work, but I hadn't read your work before. And so I told my friend who just asked you your spirit animal, I was like, you remind me of Anne Lamott, because she's a writer herself. And so I gave her the book Somehow, and it's her birthday today. And she somehow,
how wonderful.
she goes to the seminary, and you came on her birthday. So it's just like this weird spiritual thing that's happening. But my question to you is, I know like all your books represent different parts of you and different parts of your life, but is there a book that has transcended time for you and that you can always connect with?
That I wrote or that
Yes.
I've read? Oh, the book I love most is the book I wrote with my son when he had a baby at 19. It's called Some Assembly Required, because the book on having had him was called Operating Instructions, a journal of my son's first year, and Some Assembly Required was called a journal of my son's first son. And Sam wrote some of it, probably about a fifth of it, about being a father, and it is so funny. But also, it was so incredibly stressful. I mean, he was drinking and using, he was a meth addict, he had a baby, and they were at my house a lot of the time. And so the deepest, most hardcore spiritual stuff I ever wrote, I think, is in that book.
And what was the title again?
I forgot. No. It's
Some
called
Assembly.
Some Assembly Required. Yeah, yeah. That's the one I'm most glad to have written.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. One more question.
Hi there.
Hi.
I love you. I'm Marilyn, and I love you. And I'm thankful you're here. My question is, how do you live good trouble?
How do I live with what?
Good trouble. I am a person who is really struggling with being kind and being gracious and graceful and giving grace to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Not everyone.
Yeah.
And I also really strongly believe in the idea that power does not go quietly into that night.
Right.
It sometimes takes some force, and it sometimes takes some pushing and some strong pushing. And so I struggle with, I identify with the message of kindness and love and nuclear love, but I'm also like, oh yeah, but sometimes we need to lay down some bombs.
Oh, yeah.
It's here and there. Metaphorical bombs. Metaphorical bombs.
I love John Lewis's phrase, good trouble, because I am peace and freedom and love and, very California, very 60s. And, but I want to close with like a page of reading because I can really kind of, I think, express that answer in everything we've tried to share between us today and that what you've shared with me. But, my battle cry now is we do what's possible, because there's so little we can do to affect political change, to save the poor, to make any changes for really, really, really the least of God's people, the people who are being degraded and slimed publicly on a daily basis and in very high. There's so little we can do. I mean, we register voters. I'm really always excited about January because it means the midterms are coming. And then I can start writing my postcards, and I decorate all my postcards because I'm a Sunday school teacher. So I also have great markers and glitter glue. And, but in the meantime, we do what's possible. We pick up litter. We mentor people. I teach a lot of people what I know. I show up for young alcoholics and addicts. I give all the money I possibly can to the organizations representing the people I most fear for, the countries I most fear for, the countries where there are the most starving children who we have always, always, always taken care of until now. And I do what's possible. And I pray, and we, I remember the great line, I can't believe my mind has gone, who's the most famous suffragette of all?
Elizabeth.
No, not after
Katie
her.
Stanton. Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Thank you. This is why you have a job and I don't. Susan B. Anthony's niece is a sober therapist, psychotherapist, and she was asked by her people, what do you do in times of tragedy or crisis? She said, we remember to remember. We remember that we have come through these times before. Law and order is going to be all law and order for the foreseeable future. We have been through times of crisis where we thought, the 60s, all those assassinations, we thought it was over.
Yeah.
We thought it was over. But we remember what came out of that. We remember the love. We remember the Berrigan brothers. We remember Dorothy Day. We remember Martin. We remember Mother Teresa. We remember the, that grace bats last. And that the pendulum, by the laws of physics, always swings. And we do, one day at a time, anything we can do to help. We become the helpers. We are the helpers. And I wish I had a big, rousing, thrilling answer to where we go from here. All I know is that we're people of the gospel. We're people of peace. We're people of gentleness and tenderness. And if you're not helping the poor, I think Jesus still loves you unconditionally, but I think sometimes we see him with a cold compress on his forehead, hoping and wishing that there were more help for those most in need of us, of whatever we can offer. And I don't know what you have. I know what I have, and we breathe.
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, Spiritus. Let's close, if you don't mind, because it's time. I'm going to sign all of your books or your notebooks, but I can't autograph, I can't personalize them because I have an old hand. But I'm glad to meet each of you. I don't care if you have a book. I just want to warn you, I really can't personalize your books, so, except for the person whose birthday it is. So, but don't let that give you any good ideas.
Yeah. Suddenly it's everyone's birthday.
Yeah.
How ironic. Yeah.
This is the first page and a half of Somehow.
Please read.
My husband said something a few years ago that I often quote. 80% of everything that is true and beautiful can be experienced on any 10-minute walk. Even in the darkest and most devastating times, love is nearby if you know what to look for. It does not always appear at first to be lovely, and instead may take the form of a hot mess or a snoring old dog or someone you have sworn to never, ever forgive for a possibly very good reason, if you ask me. But mixed in will also be familiar signs of love, wings, good-hearted people, cats when they are in the right mood, a spray of wildflowers, a cup of tea. What are we even talking about when we talk about love? What is it? I asked a 6-year-old friend of mine at church. Oh, it's just the stuff, he said, rolling his eyes. I think that's right. Love is caring, affection, and friendliness, of course, compassion, and a generous heart. It is also some kind of energy or vibration, because everything is, right? That's what Einstein said. There's one thing here, either going very, very, very slowly, like the marble, or a glacier, or like a 6-year-old child. I wish the movement of grace in our lives more closely resembled the grace of a ballerina, but no, love mainly tromps and plomps and plops, falls over and tiptoes through our lives. Love looks like us, and that can be a little daunting. Love is why we are here at all, on the couch and in the world, with a heart for the common good, why we have hope, and a lifeline when we don't. Thank you, seminary, and thank you, Martin. Thank you all of you, everybody.
You're lovely. So have a seat real quick so that Amy and Anne can get out to the porch, and I'm just going to share a couple of housekeeping things with you. Okay. She'll be in the, Amy, she'll be in the sacristy when she's ready. There is a reception across the road in the refectory for those of you who would like a little bite to eat on your way out.